Okay, we are live. Listen, welcome to this week's Capacity Conversations. I'm so excited to have my guest, Miss Sandra Ocasio, here as we kick off Mental Health Awareness Month. I think that this is such a perfect topic and conversation that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be talking about identity loss, not like identity theft, somebody steals it from you, that sort of thing, but more so, when you wear all of these different hats as a mom, as a wife, as a leader in your organization, as a business owner, sometimes you can get lost in those roles and the stress that comes from that. And then trying to figure out who you are aside from being a mom, aside from being a wife, all of those things. So I'd like to welcome you, Miss Sandra, into this conversation so that we can go ahead and get started.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your platform. I'm excited for this.
You're so welcome. I know that we did a podcast on this a while back. It felt like almost a year ago, right? And we
Probably.
talked about it more than that, you think?
Mm-hmm.
And it was titled Reclaiming Your Identity. And some of the things that we talked about were like mind blowing to me because one thing that you said is that you were triggered by walking past the suits in your closet, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
shifted, and I won't steal your shine, right? But that stood out to me because when you shifted from working in corporate to moving and all of those different things, just seeing those suits did something to you. So
Oh,
I'm going to pause and let you talk a little bit about like how you came into this with identity loss and share a little bit of your story.
yeah. Thank you. So, yes. So, my name is Sandra Ocasio. I am a digital marketing strategist, a coach, and I have been in the online space for it's about to be 8 years. It's been crazy, right? And when I first started in the online space, it all began because we had a transition. We went from my husband is in the Air Force, and so we transitioned from Las Vegas, Nevada to Florida. And like everything else in life, I've always said, oh, well, it doesn't matter where I'm going, no matter where I'm going to go, I'm always going to thrive. Right. And so when I got to this new location, I had that mentality that, I was just going to be able to take the skill sets that I had already, the experience, the corporate experience, and just be able to go. Right. I had already done it once before when I went from Connecticut to Las Vegas. So in my mind, I was like, okay, Las Vegas to Florida, like, there's no way I can't make it anywhere
You're like,
else, right?
I got this.
In my mind, it was like, yeah, I'm going to make it. It's going to be fine. When I got here, I had a rude awakening that this area was just completely different, right? It wasn't as diverse. It wasn't as, it just was different. It wasn't as, populated. And so after going to a couple of interviews, like the best offer that I can get was just not going to match up what I used to make in corporate in Las Vegas, right? And so I was just like, okay, I don't know how this is going to play out, but what I do know is that I'm going to make it happen from home. And as a single mom, like I was kind of still new to marriage, right? My husband and I had been together for a year. And
And
so
that's a whole process, right? Being new to marriage. So
that part, right? Where it was just like, I mean, I came into this marriage with 3 kids. So for me, I was just like, by all means necessary, I'm gonna make it happen, right? Like I told you this, and I say this all the time. Like I didn't know if it was gonna be burning CDs and selling them from my trunk. I didn't know what was gonna happen. We was gonna do
someone's gonna
something.
have to give, yeah.
We was gonna do something. And so I came home. A friend of mine was like, oh, you should really look into like becoming a virtual assistant. You have like all this corporate experience. And I was like, okay. So I entertained the idea, did all my research, all the things that I needed to be able to like start serving and supporting clients. And I quickly pivoted into sales funnels and into all that other stuff. And so, but in the transition of all of that, I got so lost and like literally experienced the worst burnout ever because I was so focused on like so laser focused on I got to make it happen. I got to make money. I got to make something occur because I can't just put all this responsibility on my husband. And it literally came crashing down, where it was just like I didn't take time to actually process the fact that I had just gotten married. I had just
Mhm.
gotten I got married. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant, and 2 weeks later, he left for Korea. And
Mm.
all those transition, and then a year later, we're moving to Florida. So it's like all the transitionings that were happening, I didn't take a moment to actually say, yo, like, if you were raised anything like I was raised in an environment where it was just like, just get over it and just keep going, right?
Yep.
Like you never took
Yep.
time to process anything. Like that's how we healed, or that's how we coped, or that's how
You stay
we,
busy, right? That's what you do.
yeah, like, you were just like, it didn't matter what was happening. You just roll with it. Like just get over it and just keep moving. Like things could, and traumatic things could happen, and you were just like, it's okay, we're just going to keep going. And so for me, it all came crashing down just about 6 years ago, where I was just like, okay, I know that I'm not okay, you know. And I ended up checking myself into a behavioral hospital, where I came to realize, like, okay, I know that I'm having messed up thoughts. I know that I'm having, like, and I'm talking about just these thoughts that I knew, okay, I need help. Like, this isn't normal, right? And then I was also experiencing panic attacks. I thought I confused it with a heart attack. I was like,
Heart
what is
attack
this?
too. Yep.
Right? And then, and the first thing that they instantly want to do is just go ahead and prescribe medication. I left
Yeah.
that hospital with 7 different medications that I couldn't even pronounce. Like seven
Mhm.
different things that I couldn't even tell you like what were the names. All I know is that I was highly medicated, was diagnosed with a mental disorder after 3 minutes of talking to a doctor after being
Mhm.
sedated for like 24 hours. She asked me like 3 questions. She was like, do you get rushes of wanting to clean your house? I was like, yeah. She's like, do
Yeah.
you get depressed? Do you end up like, crashing? I was like, yeah. Like literally in my mind, I was taking it for what she was saying it, not realizing she was trying to diagnose me right there in the spot.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it was one of those that I was like, man, when I left that hospital, although I learned a lot of great things, in my mind, I was like, I have to become my biggest advocate, because now they want to shove 7 different medications down my throat. And as I was driving home from that hospital, my hands were shaking and I felt jittery. And I was like, I know that this, like being able to button up my sweater, or button up my pants, or like my shirt, in my mind, I was
Mhm.
like, that's stressed me out even more than what the hell it's trying to cure. So I need to
Mhm.
figure. And so I called the psychiatrist that they referred me, and
Mhm.
the doctor was like, I need you to stop drinking all that. Like, come to my office immediately. And after
Mhm.
one session of him and I talking, he was like, well, first of all, lady, you're a bull. Like, they gave you enough medication to sedate 4 people. That's the beginning of that. And then he's like, I don't really think you lost your mind. I think what happened here is you lost your identity. And we started exploring
Mhm.
what that actually mean, right? Like for
Mhm.
me, everything changed in that moment when he was like, you didn't lose your mind, you lost your identity. You literally used to be one person and you're no longer that person. You're now. And so then I took the skills of what I learned in that hospital and what he was
Mhm.
teaching me, and I started recognizing, like I said, recognizing that walking down a closet full of corporate suits I was no longer wearing. One, because I didn't have
Mhm.
the job, and two, I had
Mhm.
gained 40 pounds. That
Woo,
was
ma'am.
triggering me.
Yes. Yes. I want to pause for a second because you said so much. So much. First of all, did you feel a sense of relief when he said you didn't lose your mind, you lost your identity? Like, did that trigger? Was it like, man, he's right? Like, what was
I,
that moment like?
well, I actually did feel a huge relief, because I kind of, I consider myself a very logical person, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I know that, can I rationalize things sometimes better? Yeah, everybody, like I always wake up and I'm like, how can I be 1% better today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's that I rationalize. I was like, ooh, did I do that right? Or I'll question certain things. And during that season, I was questioning the way I was rationalizing because I had suicidal thoughts, right? So
Mhm.
I started telling myself a story. I'm not sane enough. And when he said, "You did not lose your mind, you lost your identity," I was like, I knew I wasn't crazy, right? Like I
That
knew it.
part. Yes.
And
Yes.
so I that gave me the confidence to say, okay, you're not really that, like, yeah, I know I'm crazy. And my husband would probably agree that yes, I'm a little out. We all are. But the reality was I had literally not taken time to grieve a person that I was no longer. And a lot of us do that. And when we spoke about this on your podcast, we talked about how people during COVID went through this and they didn't even know it,
Yep.
right? And sometimes, and I'll use an example as like identity loss could be like you used to do something very routine, very habitual, like something that you did every day. For example, when people have pets and a pet dies, right? You no longer have a pet, you identify as a pet owner and you obviously embrace that and you were like, oh, I walk my pet, but now you no longer have that pet. You have to take
Mhm.
time to relieve and like grieve the fact that you're no longer in that space, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then sometimes it's not just like the loss of someone. It could also be someone that loses an arm, loses a leg, loses the
Mhm.
capability of doing something that was routine for them, right? For me, it
Mhm.
was in my car, getting dressed. I used to take a lot of, well, I still do, but I used to take
Mhm.
a lot of pride in getting in heels, getting in the corporate
Mhm.
suit, getting the
Mhm.
kids ready, driving to work. Now I was the stay-home mom with a bun in sweatpants working from a laptop.
Mhm. Mhm. Listen, I'm over here rolling because I remember when we recorded and we laughed about that because there's so many things. We're so busy being busy because that's been the norm, right? Like you don't get over stuff, you don't process, suck it up, buttercup. That has been what many of us have learned, especially as women, right? Like wipe your tears, keep going, you got stuff to do. And so when you
Right.
go through so many different transitions, you said you got married and then you found out you were pregnant and then your husband went off and then you moved. And so you became like five different people in a really
Yes.
short amount of time. And what I want
Mhm.
people to recognize is that that's where the work lies, right? Taking the time to understand I have shifted in all of these different ways. I'm not the same person. And grieve who you used to be and figure out who to be who you are now. And what I also heard you say is that there was a lot of stuff that was on your plate at the same time. And that it sounds like what I call max capacity, right? That you had so much, you were trying to hustle and figure it out. You said you could have sold CDs if you needed to make the money, right? Like all of those different things. And so the mental capacity that you had was worn out. So was your emotional capacity. And then you're trying to put stuff together for your financial side as well. So it was a lot. And I want to thank you for being so vulnerable because, similar to you, before we started talking, I told you about 4 years ago around this time. I know you said 6 years to the date for you. Around 4 years ago this time, I was in the same place, right? I went and I checked myself into behavioral health because I had similar thoughts, right? And I didn't trust myself. I'm like, I never thought that I would be someone that said I don't want to be here anymore, right? And it was because I was struggling with my identity as well. Like you, we moved, we had new kids, we moved from the city to the suburbs, right? There was this new job. We had two kids versus just one kid. It was just so much. I didn't recognize who I was when I looked in the mirror, you know? And so some of those triggers, will you give us maybe one or two other triggers? And then I want to ask you about, how this impacts capacity and why people need to come to the conference to get the rest of what you got.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I also recognized is that I was now handling things that I normally would not be handling if I was in a corporate job, right? So for example, during that time, I also on top of what was happening with me, I also started recognizing that my son, my youngest son, he was having behavioral issues. And, I started noticing that's when he got diagnosed with autism. So for me, that was very triggering because I was like, wait a minute, y'all just labeled me with something unnecessarily. Is this actual for him, right? And so when he got diagnosed with autism, I took it very seriously, making sure that I educated myself, but I was triggered by a lot of different things because now I was identifying as a mom with a special needs child, but I was
Mm,
handling it differently because I was now able to really do my research, really educate myself on what exactly is this new season about, right? I've shared this before where I spent a whole season working from a parking lot while he was getting his ABA therapies. It would be 4 hours at a time. I used to have to
mhm,
drive to Alabama because the services that he needed weren't available in the area that we are here in Florida. And so
mhm.
a lot of those things would trigger me, and I had to literally just learn how to recognize, well, what exactly is happening? Because when your mood goes from like you're happy and you're excited and then suddenly you're
0 to
just like, oh,
60.
what occurred, right? And so I learned that you really need to start paying attention. Well, what was the train thought? Like, what was the thought process at that moment? What
Mhm,
occurred? Something actually occurred. Did something happen in the atmosphere that shifted how you were feeling? And for me, I was able to identify some of those things, right?
yeah.
Another example, my husband, I didn't know that certain little and then this is funny, but tiny little things like him leaving the socks all over the house, and maybe some of y'all could relate to this. Him leaving all over the house, I'm like, that is triggering a shit to me because I'm cleaning the house. And now I went from no longer having to clean the house all the time to now always being home and cleaning. And I was like, you don't appreciate
Mhm,
it. And now I was able to like, wait a minute, time out. Is it that serious? Right? That was the first thing.
mhm,
Is it really that serious? Then I was like, okay, I'm recognizing to communicate better because I could now let him know what is actually happening and why am I so emotional about it, right? So I would be like,
mhm,
hey, by the way, I feel like every time you leave these socks laying around, you don't
mhm,
actually appreciate the work that I put in into keeping this house clean, right?
mhm,
And it's
mhm,
being able to communicate from a place of like, how do we make this better instead of like how do we, and it wasn't about picking on him or it wasn't about
mhm,
it's about me communicating to him the things that are actually causing me mental anguish because
mhm.
you see what I'm saying. Now I was telling myself, oh, I'm the housemaid, or I'm the because I'm not working a conventional job, like all the,
Mhm,
and that becomes part of your identity, right? Like
mhm,
the stories you tell yourself matter. And so this is where you need to start taking inventory. Like, okay, for example, another one I'll give, this is the last one I'll give. I have to drive my kid to go get the bus. And he goes
mhm,
to a STEM. I've been driving, I feel like I've been driving kids for the last, I don't know, like my oldest is 20, she's about to be 23. I've been driving kids for a long ass time.
mhm,
So I was like, my son is going into high school next year, and so I said, well, the great thing is that I'm no longer driving anyone anywhere else. Like I
mhm.
don't know what it's gonna take. Maybe the new solution is you're gonna hitchhike to school or something, but
Don't make me laugh.
I mean, this is
No,
the
we laughed about that. We talked about that, because we worked together, behind the scenes on stuff as well. And that was one of the things, right? Like being somebody's personal Uber driver. That became my identity for a while. That's how I felt because when my husband went through his situation and lost his license because of the DUIs and all of that stuff, I was the one having to do all the driving. And I was frustrated. And so
Mhm.
instead of me communicating that to him, I would snap. I wouldn't, really say what was triggering. And it was the same thing. I'm like, I have to take Ubers, taxis, buses, something, because I'm not driving nobody else. I'm finished and I'm done. And it's because I identified and simultaneously, right? COVID hit. I stepped away from the corporate job. I'm at home. I'm cleaning. I would say cooking, but that would be a lie because Chef Ron cooks, right? But and then the Uber driver on top of it, I'm like, I just want to put on a suit and go to work. I never in a million years thought that I would just want to put on my heels, pull myself together, and go to work rather than driving people around like to appointments. It was too much. So I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good.
And to
Okay,
your
don't give
point,
them any more.
to your point, that's exactly it, right? That you were, because I heard you say you looked in the mirror and you couldn't even recognize yourself. That was the same for me, where I was looking in the mirror and I was like, half the time I look homeless. I was no longer this buttoned up person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult. So it's really just being in a different place, in a different state of mind, of where you know that certain things were bringing you happiness, or maybe not even happiness. It's now a shift in your every single day thing. And now how do you
Mm-hmm.
find joy in what you're doing now? And to me,
Yep.
that was, I think it was life changing for sure.
Yeah. It's that new routine, right? Like we said, you're learning, you're grieving who you were and learning how to be who you are now.
And
And
sometimes unlearning things that you really
whew,
were, you were too complacent to just say, you know what, I'll just accept, or
mm-hmm,
just, or to, it just, I don't even know if complacent was the word, but you were just accepting what you were, and you're gonna tolerate what you get, right? You tolerate what you
mm-hmm,
get, and sometimes it's like, you don't have to tolerate the things that are in front of you. You can actually say, I deserve better. What does that
mm-hmm,
look like? And so
mm-hmm.
sometimes it does require you unlearning some stuff. Because I know I had
Yeah,
to do a lot of unlearning, and that stemmed also from childhood, right? Stemming
yeah,
from, just roll with it and don't heal, like don't pause to heal. And that part is like the biggest one, right? When it comes down to capacity, we just take on because we're supposed to be if maybe you're the strong friend, right? If you're the
mm-hmm,
strong friend, only going to continue taking on and taking on. But the reality is like, well, what about you? How are you pouring
mm-hmm,
back into you? And so this
mm-hmm,
is why I'm excited about the capacity conference, because I know that a lot of the ladies that I'm going to be sharing the stage with, and you, are going to bring a lot of the tools that people are just not even saying, hey, so I see that you're ambitious, I see that you want to reach all these goals, but what about, where is the plan for you to be able to replenish, reset, and refocus? And sometimes
mm-hmm,
we skip steps. And so this is
mm-hmm.
why I'm really, really excited about the conference.
I'm just as excited as you know, because everything that you just said is capacity, right? Like our mindsets to, just even the being on autopilot. When you break that, COVID made us break autopilot and have to really sit down and be with ourselves. And I think many of us went through an identity crisis, right? All at the same time while trying to cope and still trying to unlearn. Like you said, just push through, don't worry about it. There was a time where I did everything for everybody because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, because I saw everybody else do that. So I'm still in the process of unlearning and undoing patterns and mindsets and all of those things. And capacity is about being honest, like brutally honest with yourself, and giving yourself permission to say, I do want more, or I do deserve more. Because sometimes a lot of us will kind of dim our lights or
Yeah.
push our dreams and things down because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings around us. You don't want to outgrow your friends, right? You don't want your family to think that you're better than them. Like all kinds of things. So I'm glad that you said that. And I'm so excited and honored to have you come and speak at the Capacity Conference. So the last thing that I'll do is just tell everybody where they can find you, and what your session is going to be about, and then I'll let you go. I know you got stuff to do today too.
No, of course. So you can find me at Funnels with Sandra on Instagram, or you could just go to sandraocasio.com. Just anything. I mean, obviously, what I'm talking about at the conference, and what's interesting is that I've been able to figure a way of tying my personal story and my healing journey with what I actually do professionally. And that's one of the areas where we kind of always think our story doesn't matter. And it actually does. It's very important. And so that's why I'm excited about it, because I feel like now reflecting and now going into 6 years of after going through this, I do believe that if I would have known where my capacity is, if I would have even known, hey, it's okay to say no. Remember we talked about this. It's okay to say
Mhm.
no. No, I'm not cooking. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not driving you there. No, I'm not cleaning, and saying yes to some of the things that you really do want to focus on, but because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, or we don't want to disappoint anyone, or we don't, that's why I ultimately feel like I experienced that kind of burnout. And so what I help women in the online space do is learn how to systemize and strategize and come up with a sales process so that they can create more income in their business. And but you have to fix the first piece, and that's really fixing what is your capacity, understanding your limits, understanding how you can reclaim your identity. What are you serious, like what is your to don't list, right? Because we have so
Woo.
much to do. What about,
Mhm.
right? And so really start from there, and then say, okay, why am I trying to do things that I'm not, that's not even my ministry, like that's not even my
Mhm.
lane, why am I trying to do it? And so
Mhm.
that's why I'm so excited about, I know my session is on identity, like how to reclaim your identity loss. And I know we're gonna, just talk a little bit more on how to actually reclaim that and amplify your voice through all the tools that your all the other speakers are bringing. But yeah, I'm excited
Mhm.
about this. I can't wait to
Me
see people there.
too. Because you have this proprietary method that you use to help us reclaim our identity. So I'm excited that you'll be able to share that, and everything that you just said. Like, just it's great to be in the same space with like-hearted and like-minded women, for all of us to do the internal work that we need to do so that we can show up in both our personal and professional lives. Because
Yeah.
if COVID taught us anything, there's this really thin line between personal and professional life, and they're really blended together at this point. You don't want to shine in one and feel like a failure in the other. So thank you for everything. And for those of you who are watching live or catching the replay, you need to be in the building at the Capacity Conference happening here in the Chicago area. If you are a woman, if you are a leader, an emerging leader, an existing leader, if you are someone who struggles with, saying no, setting boundaries, and putting yourself on your own to-do list, this is the space to get the tools, the resources, all the things that you need to help set you up for success, to break up with burnout, to learn how to maximize your time, to really reclaim your life. So I will make sure that the link is in the comments. It is thecapacityconference.com. I hope to see you all there, and we'll talk to you next week.